Hello everyone, NadLab. Today I'm going to be showing intermediate particle systems in Godot. So over here you can see I have two particle systems. Start with the one on the right, honestly. You can see over here we have a few effects such as particles spawning, scaling up, scaling down, and then also they start to slow down a bit. And then this other one over here on the right, you see we have particles coming out and they kind of jump up and then they fall down. I'll show you how to make both of them from scratch. So I'll leave both of them there just so we can have an idea of what we're going for, and I'm just going to program them in from scratch, or at least make them, because you can't really program the particles unless you are kind of crazy. But you can see over here we have our default particle settings, nothing crazy. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our particles have our texture, and you can see that we can actually have our particles and they have their texture over there. It's just that they're not spawning where we need them to spawn. So how do we fix this? Well, we actually have to add our particles process material, and you can see they've spawned in, or they're going to be spawning in where they need to be. Right off the bat, you can see we have a lot of options, but you already know that. I am assuming you have a basic familiarity with the particle system. But the first thing I love to do is I love going to the display, scale, and I love scaling items down a bit and lowering the min and max a lot, and then putting on a simple scale texture, or a simple scale curve like this, and then making a simple curve where it's like basically 1, and at the very end you see it scales down just to, like, you can see those scaling down gems over here. It just makes it feel a lot more professional. So I'm going to make the one on the left right now, which is kind of, it jumps up and then down. So the best way you can do this one is by looking at gravity and increasing gravity a bunch. So now you can see the gems are falling faster, but we need to have some sort of force pushing them up. And the best way we could do that is just through animated velocity. Sorry, not animated velocity, but in the spawn velocity, you just want to set the velocity up there in a certain direction. So obviously 1 is up. So like having the direction as 1 is up, and then you just want to have the velocity, increase, and you just have to increase it until you see the jumping effect. But you can see that, oh, the jumping effect isn't showing up. And that's because velocity direction has to be -1. Now you can see that the particles are jumping up, but they're not coming back down. And that's where you just have to play around with the velocity a bit. So you can see I'm just going to lower the velocity, they're coming down again. And I'm just going to grab this white bar here to lower it. And you can see we're getting a very similar effect. The way you can make them more jumpy like that is if you increase the gravity, obviously. So if I just go down here to accelerations, maybe increase the gravity to 2000 and increase the initial velocity. Yeah, we're getting a very similar jumpy effect. The reason why we're not seeing the same amount or type of jump is because I haven't increased the explosiveness. Now we're getting something very similar between this one and this one. They're very similar now. The only thing that's different is that we have particle flags, and align Y. As you can see, there's an align Y effect going, or I guess in this one there's no align Y. But what we can do is we can change the spawn angle. You can see over here the spawn angle. If I just change that and disable align Y, yeah, we're getting something very similar. I just have to change the angles min and max. There we go. Okay, we're getting a very, very similar effect. Now the only issue is you can see when we zoom in here, in fact I have to slow it down a bunch, so I'll just do that. Okay, I've slowed it down a bunch, and you can see something really weird. The gems kind of hop over each other, and it's not really clear which gem is doing what, or which spawned and when. And the only way you can change this is by going over here to draw order, and instead of doing lifetime, you want to do index. Now you can see that the gems layering that they occur in is now one on top of each other instead of spawning on top of each other as we had in lifetime, where you can see depending on when they spawn on top of the next one. Whereas in this one, the one that spawned first is always going to be on top, and then everything else is put on the bottom. You can do reverse lifetime too, although no, it gives you the same effect. Okay, so now that we discussed that, we can go back and increase the initial velocity. And then I can also increase the gravity, which is in, oh my god, I always get confused. Oh, gravity is already open, so 2000. And you can see we get a very similar effect. Honestly, I would think that these are practically the same particle effect. In fact, this other one here is just a bit smaller, to be honest. Honestly, I like the new one I made for this tutorial, so I'm just going to keep it. So if you ever play my game when it comes out on Steam, you can know that this is literally the exact same particle system. And then there's this other one over here, which I also like. So I'm actually going to be going from this particle system to the other one. So this is an intermediate. Don't forget when you do that though, if you duplicate your particle system by pressing Ctrl D, you just want to make unique and recursive. So make unique recursive. So everything over here is different. So if I change something here, it doesn't reflect over there. Okay, so now what do I want to do? Well, obviously I want to see this slowing down effect. So the best way to do that is by clicking damping as a fraction. And it took me some time to realize this, but if you go over here to accelerations and damping, you can see you have a damping option, right? And if you increase it, it's like, oh, okay. And by the way, I've selected my the particles over here on the left over here. So I'm trying to there. Maybe getting rid of the grid would help, but I'm basically trying to copy this left side and make it similar to the right side. Now, you can see over here that damping as a fraction is like, I'm turning on damping and it's not really doing anything. I'm not 100% sure why this is the case, but I feel like it has something to do with linear acceleration, although I'm not entirely sure. I just know that damping doesn't work unless this is ticked. Once it's ticked, you can see instantly it's working, and we're getting some effect where it's not really like showing, like they're not moving anymore basically. And if we decrease damping, you can see they're still not moving. So you think you should decrease it more. And when you decrease it more, you can see, yeah, some move, some don't. But the key idea here is that you want damping to be some sort of fraction between 0 and 0.1. Honestly, closer to like 0.9 maybe. Let me just, yeah, you can see now that they spawn and they kind of slow down. Oh, sorry, that is way too high. Let me decrease the values here. Yeah, something along these lines. Honestly, the more, or if you get rid of gravity, so if you set that gravity to 0, you can see damping applies a lot better, and it's a lot easier to understand what's happening. And you can see there, when the minimum is below 1, and even if the maximum is below 1, we get a very, very nice effect over here. So if I just set both of them to the same value, we see we get some effect where it's moving, and honestly, it can be boiled down to spawn velocity and the spawn velocity over here. If we just set everything very similarly, you can see, you know, it's still not the same effect over there. So I'm just going to reduce damping a lot more. Maybe set both of them to 0.3, 0.3. Okay, we're getting that effect. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because it takes me time to like learn and figure out all these things. I'm also going to increase my particle count so I can get something similar. Okay, we're getting something very similar now. I'm going to do drawing, and I'm going to do index so it doesn't look like a glittery mess. Now, these ones are spreading out a lot more, so my initial thought is to increase spread. Boom, it's in a circle now. It's very circular, in fact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease explosiveness a bit. Okay, that doesn't look as good, but we're getting there. So if I just decrease explosiveness a bit, yeah, it's doing its thing. But best way to fix this is probably to decrease initial velocity to like 0, basically. So now it's like a cloud instead of a circle. Because if the minimum velocity is very close to the initial velocity, then all the particles disperse at the same rate. Whereas now they kind of like, it's just a circle, which honestly I like. I don't know which one I want to keep. I think maybe this one. No, I'll keep this one because it fits more with the game. But you know, I was just playing around with particle systems, and because the spread was 180, I have to reduce it a bit, and now I get a very similar particle effect. Very, very similar particle effect. Yeah, and I just wanted to make this very, very quick video, less than 10 minutes, honestly, of the particle system and like how to make it work for you, because I think these look pretty good. Honestly, if I combine these particle effects, it still requires a bit of work, but you know, we're getting there. We're making the game. Everything's coming together. But the idea is, I just want to make this quick video to explain, like, you know, there's a lot of options here. I've never really seen someone just play around and show you like 2 particle systems at the start of the video and, you know, say, hey, this is what we're making. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something or learned a little bit about particle effects. What I really wanted to cover with this video is the lifetime draw order, which I've never seen anyone talk about. So you can see the difference there when I have lifetime versus index. It makes a big difference. And also the other thing is, this is what happens if damping as a fraction is turned off. And when you have it on, it's a completely different effect. That's all I wanted to discuss, and have an amazing day.